Well, the Apple Cup has given us wild endings, heartbreaks, plenty of laughs. Few people know the rivalry better than longtime sports columnist Bud Withers. His new book, Too Good to Be True, dives into the stories and shenanigans that have defined Washington versus Washington State for generations now.
Bud, thanks for being here. Maybe we can start with what sets the Apple Cup apart from all these other sports rivalries across the country.
Well, I make the point in the book that I believe it's a unique rivalry and maybe the most distinctive in the nation. There's so many differences between these two schools, starting with the fact they're almost 300 miles apart, which is fairly unusual for an in-state rivalry to begin with. But then you take into account the different curricula between the two. One's a land-grant school, one's more professional oriented. The rural versus rural campus versus major metropolis. Commuter school. Things like just the geography of the two areas, even climate. I mean, you get pretty serious snowfall over in the Palouse, and of course we're over here. We're noted for our rain. So just a ton of fundamental differences.
In writing this book, I did say shenanigans. So what's one of the craziest behind the scenes Apple Cup thing you can tell us?
Well, one of my favorite stories is your listeners will remember Robbie Tobeck, who was Drew Bledsoe's center at WSU and later a center on Mike Holmgren's good Seahawk teams, one of which went to the Super Bowl 15 years or 20 years or so ago. Tobeck was a teammate of Jeff Pahokoa with the Atlanta Falcons back in the mid '90s, and of course Jeff was a center or a offensive lineman on some really good UW teams in the early '90s. At the same time, Tobeck was at WSU. So anyway, they're in the NFL together, and the Tobecks had a little girl, a toddler, and the Pahokoa family had a little boy, and the two kids would play at each other's homes pretty regularly. And so Pahokoa engineered this prank whereby they were hosting the Tobecks' little girl one day, and they decided to dress her up in UW gear and took a bunch of photos of her, and then generated a newspaper page with the screen, a faux newspaper page, of course, with the screaming headline, "Daughter shuns birthright, chooses UW." And so next day, Tobeck comes to the Falcons practice facility, and players routinely, the first thing they do is they go and get on the scale to see how their weight is that particular day. And at the top of the scale, here's this newspaper page with photos of his little girl, daughter shuns birthright, chooses UW. And of course, the papers were all over the locker room, and even Tobeck had to concede to me that he said it was really good work.
Can we maybe talk about it? It's September, and we're doing the Apple Cup in September. I'm used to this happening at the end of the season, this game really mattering for something. With the split up of the Pac-12, does this really change the dynamic, the importance of the Apple Cup?
Well, it certainly changes the feeling around it. The word you constantly hear about the new way of doing this is weird, and indeed it is. I went to the game here a year ago, of course in mid-September, much like this one coming up this week, and it really is weird, and we're living in a different age where Washington has gone off to the Big Ten, and the Cougars are trying to find their footing in what will be a rejiggered Pac-12. And no, it's not the same. I don't think anybody would say it's the same when they were conference rivals, but it's what we're left with, and at least for the time being, we've got to make the best of it.
What would you say is the best Apple Cup you've covered?
I would have to go back to the 2002 game, which Husky fans will remember with delight, I guess. Triple overtime game in Pullman. The Cougars at the time were ranked third in the country and actually had a shot at the national title game had they kept winning. Jason Gesser, their fine quarterback, got hurt in I believe it was early in the fourth quarter. Cougars really struggled from that point on. The game goes to overtime, and then another overtime, and then a third overtime, and then it finally ends on a very controversial call on a backwards pass, which of course is a live ball as opposed to an incomplete pass. And the game is over. And in fact, the officials that I talked to, including the supervisor of officials at that time, said that it was an unnecessary call and it shouldn't have been made. So here we are 23 years later, and that's still scant consolation to the Cougar fans.
Who's more fun to cover after a big win, the Huskies or the Cougars?
Oh my goodness! I'd probably have to say the Cougars. Let's face it, they've been the lesser team in this rivalry. The Huskies have I think something like a 73% winning percentage in the rivalry, and just by that definition alone, it's kind of been a rivalry where them winning is pretty routine. And so when the Cougars win, it tends to be a bigger deal, and in many cases it's come when they've been an underdog, sometimes a decided underdog. So they probably party a little harder. Not that they need any encouragement anyway, but probably the Cougars in that competition.
Talking with longtime sports columnist Bud Withers. What are you looking for this weekend?
I guess after the Cougars have been all over the place, as you probably know. They went down to North Texas last week and lost 59-10, which was just a shocker. The Huskies have played and won their two games and probably are looking for a pound of flesh after the Cougars won here last year. You kind of feel as though the Cougars have really got to take a step forward just to keep it competitive in this game. They're like a 3-touchdown underdog. So if Washington's happens to be clicking on all cylinders, it could be an ugly day for the Cougars, and they've got to do everything possible to make sure that doesn't happen.
Okay, Bud, one last hard-hitting question for you. You've covered these games for years. Who throws the better tailgate, Huskies or Cougars?
Oh my goodness! I'm taken back to an era of when I used to cover the Huskies. There would the press parking was in the Triangle parking garage. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but it's kind of between University Hospital and Husky Stadium, and it's. I used to park there, and you would actually see people tailgating in this parking garage, and of course there's exhaust fumes wafting over the roof of or beneath the roof of the building, and I always thought, gee, this is a really strange place to tailgate. I again in this one I'd probably have to give it up to the Cougars. They of course they've got that Cougar Gold cheese which goes well on tailgate parties, and they usually manage to walk down with the right stuff as well.
The coolest thing about the Apple Cup for me is having attended both schools, my team always wins.
You can't lose.
Right.
Well, Bud Withers, thank you for your time today. Really look forward to the Apple Cup and look forward to reading your book. Thanks for joining us.